our students come with such diverse backgrounds, right? And even if they do have the same ethnicity or different similar identity markers, they still have individual perspectives, and there's stakeholders in education. And often adults sit around in rooms because they have degrees or because they've had certain training or whatever the case is, or just because simply they're adults. And they constantly bang their head on the wall thinking through, how can we design systems and structures that the youth will succeed in?
Yeah.
So if you actually go and you treat the primary stakeholder in education, the unit of change, which is students, as the primary stakeholder, and ask them and co-create with them and design with them and trust them to do so, then you're going to create system structures and initiatives that actually work because they were involved in the process. And so on top of being a way to invest students in their own education, it's also just simply a way to ensure that the things that we're doing as a school and as a system actually work because we ask the people that we want it to work for.
Welcome to the Power of Community on the Voice of Montbello Podcast. I'm your host, Chelsea, and today I'm here with Rico Gomez, founder of Meta Academy. We are also joined by Meta Academy inner Khamani. And thank you guys for joining us. We're really excited, and we're going to be making you some questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In this special podcast series, we speak with powerful educators and entrepreneurs who have participated in the Moonshot Fellowship in Denver, Colorado. Moonshot is an amazing fellowship that empowers educators to reimagine education and embrace their creativity to develop innovative and transformative experiences with youth. Okay, so I would like to know more about you guys, like your background, where are you from, like your ethnicities, or just things that you want to share that really represents who you are. Would you like to start?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Denver. I moved around the city a lot. I was born to a mom who was 17 and soon after had a couple of kids. My dad wasn't necessarily in the picture ever since I was about 4 years old. And so that produced a good amount of instability, right? Being essentially in a single mother household. My grandparents really stepped in and supported us. But despite some of that turbulence and instability, my mom really prioritized mine and my sister's education. So we went to really unique schools that really spoke to me and my needs, my passions. So I went to a Montessori school from preschool all the way to 6th grade, where it was really innovative in the sense that I was in mixed grade classrooms, so young kids could practice their leadership with even younger students. It was super hands-on, and you were trusted with a lot of autonomy and responsibility, even though you were really young. And then after that, I went to Coons Miller Creative Arts Academy, which was an art school. And so those experiences, I think, have really shaped me as an individual, as well as the idea for Meta Academy. More on the family side, my mom's family is from Mexico originally, as well as my dad's family. And so we are Latino Denverites. We've been here for multiple generations. At this point, after my grandfather on my mother's side had immigrated from Mexico, my grandmother on my mother's side was born in Texas. And so we've been in Denver for a couple of generations now.
Cool. All right. What about you?
Yeah, so my family, I was born and raised in Aurora and then have lived in Denver for the majority of my elementary up until right now. My mom and dad divorced pretty early when I was in elementary school, so that kind of made a difficult dynamic for me, having 3 older sisters who all grew up fairly different from me. So having to get used to almost feeling like at my mom's house, it was one person I had to be. And then when I was with my dad, another person that I was kind of being taught to be.
Mm.
But both of them always took my education seriously. But having that dynamic up until I got into high school, I was just a quiet kid who my idea of being a good person and just success that I was taught was just being a good student in school, get all A's and stay out of trouble, and then eventually get to college. And up until I met Rico in my high school at when I was a sophomore,
Oh.
that's the mindset that I had. And then once I was able to engage with him through his classes and through the beginning of KIP Northeast Denver Leadership's Academy is Student Born, a program that there was no leadership program at any point before that. So really getting involved with that showed me that not only did I like helping people and teaching people, but it was really eye-opening for me to see that I'm not just a high GPA student. I don't just have to be a quiet student. I could be somebody that I'm quiet when I feel like it, but when it comes to things that really matter and helping people out, that I use my voice, even if it doesn't impact me, because that's just what's right to do.
I like how you pointing that out because sometimes we think that we have to fit in a box and that's where we have to be. But we can literally be like anything. We can be everything. And I really appreciate you sharing your experience. And Rico, I know that you just told us you attended an art school. And I want to know what were the benefits for you attending that school and some challenges too because I feel like as an artist there are always like this challenges of it's either competition or
Mm,
just like let's say you're feeling block
mm.
or stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say the benefits are that you're in a community of like minded individuals who all either know they're creative or are learning to become creative, right? So Koonsmiller was an arts infused school. So that meant that everything that we did, so even if it was like math and English, for example, not just art classes, we were learning through the vehicle of art, right? So it leveraged our passions and creativity in order to get us to access the material that was being presented and that we were supposed to be learning, right? So that made it so that students had something to look forward to every day in going to there for the most part. I've spoken to some alumni who said that didn't really work for me. I had a different experience, right? And so I think that that's one of the possible areas of improvement with the school that's so specialized, right? Is how do you take your model and though it works for perhaps a majority of students, how do you take it a step further and ensure that it works for everybody that decided to go there? I would say another challenge is that in those environments, right, it isn't reflective of what comes after school. So I was part of the first graduating class of an art school, right? But when you go, say, to college or career, depending on what your path looks like, that's not necessarily what the environment reflected when it was leveraging all of your passions, etc. So I think that another area of growth for something, a model like that, is to ensure that students are getting at bats or practice at what life and education looks like after leaving high school. I should also add that I graduated with a career technical education certificate in graphic design too. So on top of being an arts infused school where everything that you do, you're learning through art, they also have specialized pathways where you can focus on certain things. And so there was like a theater arts pathway. My pathway was graphic design. And so I leveraged that skill that I use to this day to do like freelance graphic design on the side, or even to do a lot of the branding and marketing for Meta, for example, or even at my current job at CEC Early College, leveraging that skill to visually reinforce messages.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's great. I'm speechless. So I also know that you've been participated before, like in many organizations that works with youth, right? So why is this important to you? Why is like youth voice so important to you?
So my own journey is one where I probably wouldn't be where I am now if it wasn't for opportunities to practice student voice and leadership. So when, for example, like I said, I was at a Montessori school, right? I got a taste of that because I was like a sixth grader in a class with also fourth graders. And so I got to like be a leader, even though I was super young. And then when I went to Kunzmiller, it was a school that actually shut down before I started there. And so it took a year to like redesign. And then I was part of the first graduating class there, starting in seventh grade all the way to 12th grade. And so it wasn't actually until I didn't get involved actually in student voice until essentially I showed up as a senior and it was on my schedule. And I was like, what is this? It's during my lunch period once or twice a week. I was pretty salty about it. But it actually was that an educator believed in me enough to essentially enroll me in it. And so prior to that opportunity, I liked going to school, especially because I got to practice my creativity and whatnot. But I had a really bad GPA, right? I wasn't as academically engaged, as academically focused as I needed to, especially not to like access certain opportunities after graduation. But the opportunity of being able to be like a leader in my school and build something new, which was our student board of education, and create that structure from scratch and be able to bring to the surface certain feelings or initiatives on behalf of students, not only like made me practice my leadership, but also invested me in school. So that was like one of the most formative experiences that showed me that like student voice and leadership can really invest people in their education overall. And so after that point, I also went to Regis and like was president of the student government my senior year, and then went to KIP where I was a teacher and also helped institute that student board of education at that school.
Okay. I will also like to ask that to you, Khamani, why you think it's important to raise the voice of youth.
Yeah, for me, I know it's important to raise the voice of youth because just growing up, especially in both the public school I went to for elementary and then the charter network I was a part of from middle school up until or through my senior year. Their structure of both schools, whether public or charter, was always I'm doing what I'm told and I'm not supposed to ask questions about it. And that was something that became pretty constant for me everywhere. And that made me just not want to talk or share ever, really. Whether it was home or school, I just felt like I was always supposed to just do what I was told without asking questions. And then once I met Rico and I had to go to a club after school for my sophomore year because of the continuation requirements. And I showed up with a good friend of mine and he volunteered me to run for vice president. And that was something that I had never been put in a position like that. And then once I was eventually elected and engaging with both Rico and then other students within KIP's new student government program, it was something that I just slowly realized like a lot of what I grew up with is something that shouldn't be the way it is and it doesn't help anybody. I was close friends with a lot of students who were considered bad students, whether it was GPA or their behavior a lot of the time. And I would always hear from teachers, why do I hang out with people like that? Or, why? Or if they finally heard me speak, they were always shocked that I could talk as well as I do. And that was something that through student government, I realized that shouldn't be an experience anyone goes through. We should always assume that it doesn't matter what you look like, your GPA, you could do whatever you want if we really put you into position. And if we challenge you, there should be no questions about how capable you are. And then getting to college now and having multiple internships last summer that I did at the same time, whether it was with Meta or government organizations, even an education program. And then this year, a work study role at UCCS where I'm a student ethics ambassador. And I've just continued to realize that many people don't use their voice because they were never allowed to. And it's not because they don't know how, not even because they don't have anything good to contribute. It's just if they were never trusted to do it, they're not going to even push themselves to do it. So because I had that experience and I see people every day who go through that, I want to make sure that it's not a constant in education or just in life.
I feel like that's a great message to give to like people, let's say people that are like in high school and they feel like they are not going to make it to college. Because I had a lot of friends. I'm a freshman in college right now. And lots of my friends were like, no, I don't think I'm going to make it. I'm probably just not going to even try. And I was always like trying to stay confident about it because in my personal experience, I didn't felt as confident in getting into college, but like I was always like, I don't know how, but I will. I don't know how, but I will. And I think that's something to keep in mind because like us as humans, we are capable of a lot of things. And it doesn't like whatever the background of the person is or whatever their ethnicities or the things that they've been through, that shouldn't be a barrier to them to be able to do things, you know? And I'm really glad that you realized that and now you can share it with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I add one more thing to the power of that?
Yes.
So to your point, like our students come with such diverse backgrounds, right? And even if they do have the same ethnicity or different similar identity markers, they still have individual perspectives and they're stakeholders in education. And often adults sit around in rooms because they have degrees or because they've had certain training or whatever the case is, or just because simply they're adults. And they constantly bang their head on the wall thinking through how can we design systems and structures that the youth will succeed in. And what's missing? The youth voice, right?
Yeah.
So if you actually go and you treat the primary stakeholder in education, the unit of change, which is students, as the primary stakeholder, right? And ask them and co-create with them and design with them and trust them to do so, then you're going to create system structures and initiatives that actually work because they were involved in the process. And so on top of being a way to invest students in their own education, it's also just simply a way to ensure that the things that we're doing as a school and as a system actually work because we ask the people that we want it to work for.
Yeah. I feel like this is something that should be normalized.
Yeah.
I feel like it's not. Like having this type of spaces or having youth doing things because they can, it doesn't happen a lot. It's just because at least like I don't have much friends that do like the same stuff as me, like by saying doing things after school or just getting involved with their community or getting involved to make things happen. And yeah, I am, well, I actually don't know, but I'm guessing that there are like people out there that want to start things like this that you're doing, but they can't make it. And it's because they're missing the people that is intended for. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
And now we're gonna get into Meta Academy because this is your, because like, wow, that's the way I can describe it. So I would like to know, what was your source of inspiration to create Meta Academy, to make this happen?
I think the source of inspiration is kind of like what we've been talking about, which is that young people rise to high expectations and people do not rise to low expectations, right? And so high expectations often in education, I think, has consistently meant what students act like, their behavior, even how they dress, sometimes how they sit, right? And high expectations doesn't always mean, and needs to start meaning more often, students' ability to critically think, their ability to do things that are real, their ability to make an impact on their school, on their community, on their peers, so on and so forth. And so the inspiration for Meta is really that idea of how can we leverage authentic experiences, meaning real world learning as much as possible to raise the expectations of what young people are capable of, right? And so I just, like, in my own educational journey, both as a professional and as a student, realized that, like, there's so much power in putting a really ambitious real world target in front of students and giving them a reason for their learning to matter. Because students, especially in the age where you can learn anything on YouTube and you can learn a lot on TikTok even, right? When even at the high school level, students ask, why does this matter? I find that we as adults are consistently and increasingly not having good answers, right? Like, oh, this vague idea of, like, it'll benefit you in the future, or like, I've gone through it, so, like, listen to me. It's important to write this essay so you know how to write. Like, those answers are no longer sufficient for youth. And so if we design our learning environments so that they have high levels of responsibility and do real world things, they will have a desire to build that skill set. They will have a desire to become good writers, good speakers. They will have a desire to be good at math. They will have a desire to do all the things that school wants them to do. And we have a real world reason for them to do so. And so the inspiration for Meta is, like, how can we make it an experience that students actually understand why getting good at these things matters for their communities, but also for their own future.
Wow. Yeah. Actually, that's something that I always had, like, an issue with school. Like, I will say my whole life, I was like, okay, I'm doing this. Okay, I'm learning this, but why?
Mm-hmm.
And I always had that question, and I think no one answered me. I graduated from high school and no one ever answered me that question. Why am I learning this? How is it going to help me? Now, I do kind of have, like, an answer for myself. I understand it better. But as a kid, let's say when I was 12, I didn't want to do that because I couldn't understand why I was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And even though now I know, like, it's the what if, because I didn't, I will just say, okay, I'm just not going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually happens with a lot of kids. That they're like, you know what? I don't want to do this homework. I don't know why I'm doing it. So I think it's great that you're making this possible.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Khamani, so as an intern of Meta Academy, what is your experience like? What are, like, things that you really, really like about it?
Yeah, honestly, I'd say that everything about Meta is something I like, and not just because of how long I've been able to interact with Rico, but for me personally, a lot of even the internships that I've done out of high school, and I'd get given a task, and when I'm asking why or trying to figure out what I'm doing it for, it's obvious, or I'm told that it's just the work nobody else wants to do. And with my student government experience, there's a lot of times where I was doing the work that nobody had to do, but Rico helped me understand that somebody has to do that. It's not something that nobody could just touch and you'll be perfectly fine. But he was at least open and honest about that. And it made me like small things a lot more, like making spreadsheets, figuring out how to automate spreadsheets so you're doing as little work as possible. And that's something that even with Meta, it's still true. Every now and then, something like research, I enjoy. And I'm able to hear from Rico, and I could just see myself that what I'm doing isn't something that he's giving me just because he feels like I have to do something to be a part of Meta. It's something that I'm doing to not only help Meta as a whole, but to help myself grow with my own skills, whether that's spreadsheet, speaking with others, helping design actual aspects of Meta. And that's something that I've always enjoyed, just having that honesty and openness about what my purpose is and what I'm going to see what I do get used for.
So that's, like, the way to support your goals?
Yeah, it supports my goals because something that I've gotten more passionate about is mentoring others and serving as a figure that people could draw inspiration from, hopefully. Right now, I'm very close and mentor current seniors at the high school that I went to. And a lot of the time they get caught up in when things are difficult, that's when they want to just quit, or when things are they can't understand, or they don't understand how to just teach themselves something. And through my experience with Meta, being able to do research, or even being able to do something like designing or helping design a pilot, is something that when they're trying to do something for student government, I could help them do that. It's an experience that helps me learn how I could teach people, because what I'm doing isn't just something that only I'll ever see or only Rico will ever see. A lot of it is something that eventually there's going to be student input on, there's going to be community input. So understanding that helps me advance that goal of being the best teacher and mentor that I could be.
So I would like to know, how can we find Meta and why you think it's important for people to reach to it and be able to get involved with Meta? What are
Yeah.
the benefits of it?
Yeah. So you can find it at metaschools.org. And what you'll find there, if you're a family member, a community member, hopefully a student of ours in a few years, is a unique model. And that unique model, it's kind of complicated, so bear with me, is rooted in the name Meta. And so what Meta means is two things, and then more things after that. The main two things are, number one, metacognition, which basically means building the ability for students to think while they're in school, not just about what they're learning, which is what school does, right? Study this, do the test on this, pass this. So not just what, but also how they're learning. So building that reflection capacity for them to own their learning and understand themselves as learners, so that they can understand how they can use their learner strengths to overcome some of their, or enhance some of their learner areas of growth, which hopefully can help with some of that culture shock in college, right? Where like all of a sudden you have all this responsibility, all of a sudden nobody's like controlling your learning for you. If you really understand yourself as a learner, hopefully you're going to be able to succeed. The second thing that Meta stands for is basically an acronym, which is short for management, entrepreneurship, teaching, and art. And that is the combined skill set and competencies that we want graduates to leave with. So it's not necessarily like a pathway, right? It's not like you choose the M pathway or the E pathway or the T or the A pathways. What it is basically like you're going to practice and be really good at those skills. And then when you graduate, you're going to be able to design a more equitable future, right? So an example would be like management. When people think of management, they usually think of like, I don't know, running a business, right? We mean run a business, but we also mean run a nonprofit. We also mean community organizing, right? Because community organizers are some of the best managers in the world, right? Being able to pull people together behind something. We mean project management and getting really good at completing projects with a team from A to Z, which is a skill you're going to need after you graduate, right? When we say entrepreneurship, we mean start new businesses, but we also mean start new social impact ventures, right? Start things that young people need. Come up with innovative ways to address issues that are happening in the community, for example. When we say teaching, yes, we mean like if you want to leave Meta and eventually become a teacher of color, because we desperately need those, you're going to start learning how to do that while you're at this high school. But it also means teaching people things that can be beneficial for them in a compelling and actionable way. So back to community organizers, right? Like they have to teach people things all the time. They have to teach people how to take action. They have to teach people about an issue that's really complicated, that's impacting them, so on and so forth. And then lastly, art. We do mean like creative expression, right? Being really good as a 2D artist, but we also mean how can you leverage your creativity to achieve your goals for yourself and for your community. So for example, if I'm somebody who wants to, right, like start a social impact venture by teaching young Latinas how to code, as an example, right? How can I use graphic design skills to build a website? How can I build videography skills so that I can create videos to help promote what I'm trying to do? How can I use creative expression in a way that makes people follow my lead and actually get involved with what I'm trying to do to achieve change for myself and my community? So basically, it's super complicated, but that's the two things that Meta stands for.
Khamani, From your point of view, why do you think people should get involved in Meta Academy?
Yeah, people should get involved with Meta Academy because it's not something that is just for a small group of students or people in general, even. Many times when it comes to something related to a school or just education in general, too many people will promote that as something that is a student exclusive or a high school exclusive experience. The things that Meta is trying to accomplish and the people we're trying to serve is not just a small portion of just students or only skills that you'll see help you up until you graduate high school. It's something that if you want to go to college, you'll get there and you'll realize you could do great things in college and be successful. A lot of the time, schools they focus on getting to college but not finishing. And if they do talk about finishing college, they don't focus on finishing debt free or as debt free as possible. But through Meta, the skills you'll build if you want to go to college, it's going to be something that you'll be able to use those skills up until you get your degree. And you might end up getting opportunities that help you pay for college or that make it so you don't have to pay for college. If you don't want to go to college, Meta is going to make sure that if you're just really involved in your community, you'll know how to make sure that you could get as many people as possible together to stand for something successfully. If you're someone who wants to just go straight into a job, and it could be from military to work, just anywhere in the workforce,
Mm.
it doesn't matter what or where, the skills you're going to gain are all things where you'll not only will you benefit and be successful, but you'll be able to teach other people. And then everywhere you go, you're going to leave just a lasting impression of how others after you could be successful and make sure that they're mentoring and teaching other people to continue that success.
And so, real quick, concrete ways that people can get involved before we forget. We want to recruit people who want to be interns. So, high school age students right now that are interested in building a brand new learning environment. We want community design team members. So, educators, families, community members, and current students who are going to help design the high school going forward. And we also want prospective board members. So we're eventually going to become a nonprofit organization. And so we're going to have board application opportunities. And we want to get people with diverse skill sets, experiences, and expertise to help us design it. And so if you're interested in something that's unique and that will help build a pipeline of people of color who are primed to disrupt oppressive systems and are able to design a more equitable future, feel free to let us know through our website. Another thing to note is that the location that we want to serve is like far northeast Denver, most likely. And there are high schools up there right now, but there aren't high schools that are trying to deliver the model that we are trying to deliver. So if you're interested in trying to build something where students of color will become educators, education leaders, future principals, future teachers, future superintendents, business people, entrepreneurs, artists, graphic designers, website designers, then help us start Meta Academy.
Yay. Sorry, that was a weird reaction. Okay. So let's talk about Moonshot. What was the most important lesson that you learned there?
I think the most important thing you learn, or that I learned being a Moonshot fellow, is the power of community. I was actually, to be honest with you, really nervous as a person of color to enter education because I wanted to do this work because I know that there's significant changes and progress that need to be made in order for us to serve students of color better. And that doesn't come for free. It actually comes at a big price to the emotional well-being of educators of color, to the professional experience of educators of color. To put it simply, it's tough for educators of color who are trying to make changes in a system that was not designed for and by them, right? And so Moonshot was a place for me to essentially find refuge, my people that I knew, right? Had the same end goal, which was creating a system that works better for the communities that we're coming from that are often historically marginalized, right? And when you're in a system where not a lot of professionals look like you, but you have firsthand experience with why it's important to make the system work better, it can be pretty isolating, right? And you don't often have community built in because people don't share that experience with you. And so Moonshot is a place where people can really lean on each other and have confidence that they're all there for the same reason and they have similar experiences and they have the same ultimate goal.
How would you describe you before and after Moonshot?
Good question. I think before Moonshot, to that point, I was somebody who, and I'm still working on this, likes to tackle things alone, go for it, kind of just like, I know I can get it done, right? And that's just not sustainable, especially not in this field, in anything really, but especially in this field, right? So what Moonshot taught me was the power of like getting other people involved, the power of putting work in front of people, even if it's imperfect, because I have learned perfectionism, and getting feedback so that it could ultimately be better. And I don't think I would have learned those things as quickly if I wasn't in Moonshot.
Okay. So what does the experience that you had in Moonshot mean to you?
I think it has ultimately meant that I can trust others to help me grow personally, professionally, emotionally. And for me, it has ultimately meant a space where I can feel free to be my full self, where I can feel free to dream big. I can feel free to have high expectations of what's possible. And so for me, that's been really important, is to have that community where I'm able to do those things. And so ultimately it means community. We're looking for community design team members, which is basically a group of students, families, community members, educators who want to reimagine what education can look like to help us co-create the school. We're also looking for board members, so people that have a diverse set of experiences and backgrounds, young people who are seasoned professionals, etc., to help oversee Meta as it continues to grow as an organization. We're also looking for student interns, so people who are current high schoolers who are interested in making sure that a new learning environment that prepares students of color to design a more equitable future by becoming teachers of color, principals of color, superintendents of color, business people of color, government leaders of color, artists, graphic designers, web designers of color, so on and so forth. If you're interested in making that vision a reality and you're a young person, it doesn't matter if you have a good GPA, a bad GPA. It doesn't matter if you've been the star student for a long time or if you're a student who does feel disconnected from school. Please get involved, because your perspective, like I said earlier, as the primary stakeholder is what's going to make this vision actually work.
You say you're welcome to the Cool People Club.
The Cool People Club.
It's a Cool People Club.
Exactly.
That's Meta Academy.
There you go.
All right. Well, thank you, Rico and Khamani, for joining us today. It was a pleasure to have you on the show, and thank you all for tuning in. But before we leave, Rico, please finish this sentence. Moonshot is
a place to find your people.
Yes, it is. Well, thank you guys for staying tuned, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you.
Yay. It was great.
Thank you for listening to the Voice of Montbello Podcast.
You can find our episodes anywhere you listen to podcasts.
You can support our work by checking out our Instagram at Confluence Media Center.
Click the link tree in the bio to connect with us.
Be sure to rate, reviews, and follow us. Make sure you put them good. And make a donation.
This has been a Confluence Media production.